Everybody, welcome back to the garage. Today I have to solder a leaky brass float. I think this is the only thing left from getting this mini bike running. If you've been watching the previous videos, you know I've been working on this mini bike, trying to do a mechanical restoration on it, making it all fully functional again. A lot was wrong with it. It's come a long ways. Let me show you that real quick. I think we left off in the last video that I was going to weld the kickstand back on it, and there it is. It is spring loaded, and it folds back up and folds back down into place. There it is, sitting on its own. I don't have to lean it up against anything or put a wooden block under it. It's on its kickstand. I've also gone ahead and got these the controls all straightened out. The other ones are over here. They, let's see. Well, for one thing, the grips didn't match. Not that that's a game killer, but the brake controller, the handle was busted off of it, and the throttle, you know, the twist throttle. This was rusted onto the handlebars, so it didn't turn anymore. I chiseled that off, and so what we ended up with here is, here's the new, now it has matching grips, and the brake actually, it almost works too good. Hopefully we'll be demonstrating that later. And the twist throttle, hey, there it is. Works nice and freely. And there's the cable on the other end. I'll have to figure out how to hook that up to the carburetor once the engine's on. And the kill button to shut the engine off. That's an old type button, but I took it all apart and cleaned it and tested it with my ohm meter, that when you push that button down, that it actually grounds out this wire, and that will be hooked onto the ignition on the engine. So everything works. Throttle, kill button, the brakes. So let's see here, what else? Oh, I'll have to get a belt for it too. I'll get the engine, I did stop and get all the correct size bolts. I'll get this thing bolted correctly, and then I'll have to take a measurement. I might have a belt here for it, or something close. I might have to run and get a belt. But once that engine's running, if we can put power to the back wheel by the end of this video, I'll have done that pretty well. I'll be pretty happy with that. Also, in the previous videos, you know, we ruled out two other engines that I considered using. We're using this 5 horsepower Tecumseh engine, and part of the thing is I have to figure out how to hook that throttle cable up to this mechanism down here. And I don't know exactly how I'm going to do that, but one thing at a time. I'll get that figured out. I have the carburetor off. The issue with this engine was there was no fuel getting into the carburetor. So, and this thing had set for a long time. I knew the carburetor was probably all clogged up, and it was. It had a bunch of junk in it. I'll show you this here real quick. I guess the basics here. Even if it was getting fuel, if there wasn't that blockage, the engine would have, or the carburetor would have overflowed. It would have been spewing gas everywhere. I'll show you why here in a second. Two causes of that are in this float bowl. Okay, gas comes in the fuel line, and it comes out of this hole right here. And what regulates that is this float. There's a pin that goes in there, and a little, well, there's a valve, and it's usually referred to as the needle and seat, but it's a valve. What happens is that this little needle hooks to the float, and as the carburetor fills up with, as the bowl fills up with gasoline, the float comes up, and pushes that needle up in there, and it shuts the fuel off. So sometimes what will happen when a carburetor floods is some dirt or debris will get in there to where that needle can't shut the whole way. So that was my concern, that this was clogged, but even if it was open, there was enough mess in there that probably wouldn't have shut the whole way anyway. But that's not the reason why this is flooding. That's often the reason is debris doesn't let that shut the whole way. So usually a carburetor just needs taken apart and cleaned, and then that starts working okay. The other cause of flooding is if your float doesn't float anymore. And this one has a little hole, a little crack in it to where it fills up with gasoline, and then it's heavy and it sinks. So that allows that needle to be down, letting gas in, instead of this floating up like it should and shutting that off. Well, it can't. It doesn't float anymore. How I discovered this was leaking was when I was cleaning the carburetor, and I sprayed this with cleaner, and I went and I blew it off with compressed air, or with the air compressor, and by the time I walked back over here to the bench, it had a wet spot. And I got a paper towel and I wiped that wet spot off, and it just gotten wet again. So I discovered, yeah, this thing leaks. And I shook it, and I could hear a little bit of liquid in it. So I just set it up on top of the engine overnight with a low spot at the bottom, and it just weeped out overnight. So this morning it was dry. There's a little hole right where this dent is. It leaks, and then there's a little crack that goes down to this seam. So I'm going to try soldering that. I did watch a couple of YouTube videos on it, believe it or not. And you know what? Some guys are better at this stuff than others. I found one that was pretty helpful, looks pretty easy. The other one, the guy's fumbling around with it, and like I am. All right, let me get this thing soldered up. Okay, now this is tricky business. I need a way to hold this, and the only way I can think of is I have this little vise. But these things are very delicate, so I just need to hold it. Maybe I can just wedge it. I don't want to clamp on it at all. Maybe that'll just stick in there. There? Okay. Yeah, don't put your float in the vise. If you have one of these really tiny vices and you're very, very gentle, you can probably get away with it, but be careful. They will crush. They will crush quite easily. Now, from what I've seen on the YouTube videos, okay, this should just go on here just really, really nice. This is real easily. Brass is very friendly to solder. It welcomes the solder. And this is flux core. It has flux in it. The iron is hot enough. Just going to warm the surface up a little bit here, and hopefully this goes on here nicely. Well, it's not just jumping on there. Why? Okay, there we go. There we go. Now it's kind of painting it on there. Actually, I need to get it up here where this crack is a little better. Well, I'm not real happy on how this is going, but I'm not giving up yet. They do sell new plastic ones online, and if I don't succeed at this, I may have to go that route. That may have got it there. Yeah, and that's flowing all around that seam right there too. This is starting to work better. I think the float itself is getting nice and warm. But this solder is flowing better. Yeah, I'm kind of liking that. I think that's it. I think I'll let that cool down a little bit, and then maybe submerge that in some gasoline, and let it sit for a little while, and then shake it around and see if it sounds like there's any liquid inside. See if it leaked. Okay, two things. The gas tank is full of fresh gasoline, and I did let a little bit run out of the hose, and a little bit of yucky stuff came out, but then it cleared right up. So I'm hoping I want a little bit more to run out, and plus I want some gasoline to submerge that float into to test it. Let me see, there's a valve over here. Come on, come on. Yeah, it looks nice and clean. Come on, valve, open up. No. Yeah, that's all nice, clean looking gas. I'll look in the bottom of the jar and see if anything settles to the bottom. Looking good so far. I think that's going to be plenty. At least the valve works good. Yes, that looks really good. I don't see any particles whatsoever in there. So that's good. So that's it. I'll put the float down in that gasoline. Well, it certainly floats. I'm going to try to submerge it for a bit, and then we'll come back. I'll come back about 15 minutes later, and I'm going to dry this thing off and see if it stays dry or if it continues to make wet spots. Okay, it's not pretty, but it's not seeping. I don't see anywhere where it looks damp. A little glob. There's a little glob on there. I'll have to make sure it doesn't interfere with the float bowl or anywhere in the carburetor. I could probably file it off. But if it doesn't interfere, I'm going to leave it. And I just have to watch out that, it'll still float, but that could throw off the float level a little bit. If it's enough to make a difference, that big of a difference or not, remains to be seen. I'm just going to leave it where it's set for now, and hopefully be all right. Okay, so that little metal clip on there just it just goes in here and just kind of holds things in place. Now I'll just carefully put that up into the carburetor. That needle goes up in the seat. Come on. Then I have to get that pin, put the pin in it. There we go. Go through the second half of it. There we go. So far, so good. I can hear the float going up and down, so it's not getting hung up on the cap. So I think she can go back together now. If I can find the little rubber gasket that goes on the bowl. Uh-oh. Oh, there it is. Now, this is swelled a little bit from over time and gasoline, but not bad. I think we can make it work. Actually, I should put it on the carburetor. Let's sit this down on the carburetor. Come on. There we go. Okay, I have that seal all down on the carburetor now. So down the whole way. Get our float bowl in place. Yeah, it's slightly swelled. Maybe I should put a little bit of oil on it and twist and turn. I decided to douse it with some WD-40 and maybe spin it. Oh, that did it. Man, it went right down on there nice. A little bit of lubrication and spin it. Went right on. That's it. We're left with this jet. Just gonna snug that up. There. I think the carburetor's ready to go back on. Now I've gone ahead and put the carburetor back on it and turned the fuel valve back on. So after sitting here for about 10 minutes, there's no fuel leaking out of it. So, and if that needle wasn't seating properly, this would be overflowing with gas by now after 10 minutes. Because the gas tank is full and it's well above this, so that would be pushing the fuel out of here. So that needle seems to be seating properly. And I guess I should confirm that it's getting gas to begin with, huh? Let me break this loose here. Yeah, should make sure it's getting gas, but not overflowing. Oh yeah. She's getting gas. Nice. I think this is ready to run. I'm gonna go ahead and get my bolts and get this thing on the mini bike. And I did clean all the gunk off this plate. A lot of times these get built up oil residue and all kind of nasties on there. Instead of mounting it down to a bunch of gunk, I cleaned it off good. There's all our mounting hardware. We'll get it on. Now, I know I've checked the oil in this, but I just need to double check. I just want to be sure. It could maybe use just a tiny. Nah, it's good. It might get an oil change here pretty soon. This oil in there doesn't look bad, but yeah, been in there probably 10 years. But oil has a pretty good shelf life, right? Been in the earth for how many million years? Didn't go bad. It didn't spoil. So I think that's it. The choke is on, and the gas is turned on. Yikes! Let's see what's going to happen here. Give it some throttle. Maybe I'll turn the truck back off. Come on, girl. I need some cooperation out of you today. That's promising. I'll turn the choke halfway off. Come on. I'm gonna give it some more choke. I might need to set my the screws in the carburetor a little bit better. I better have a look at that. But that's the first that's tried to run without having to dump some gas down the spark plug hole. So it's getting some gas. Huh. Well, maybe I should try giving it a little bit of throttle. Okay, I'm going to edit out the rest of the pulling. I obviously missed something in the carburetor. I think there's maybe still a little bit of blockage in the main jet. And I looked online real quick. A new carburetor for this thing is only like $18 with 2 days shipping. So I figured if I could take that carburetor back off again to even clean it, you know, while it's off, you know, maybe why not just put a fresh carburetor on it? That's the last thing I need is an old, even clean, and say I can get it running. Still, if it's just old and temperamental, there's something about putting a fresh carburetor on it altogether. You know, there's going to be no blockage anywhere. You know, 100% clean and new, and you know, to have a new float in it as well. So I don't know if that solder, how long that repair would last. Maybe a long time, maybe not, but maybe I'll just put a fresh carburetor on it. If this was electric start, I might, you know, because if it was a little bit temperamental, I just hit the starter button a little bit more until it got running. But being pull start, I want it fresh, I want it easy starting. So we're going to go that route. I'm going to get that ordered. Should have that in 2 days. And we'll get back to this. We'll throw that fresh carburetor on it and see what it does then. I did find a belt for it. I haven't slipped it on the rest of the way yet, but I will. We'll get this thing running. Anyway, thanks for hanging out in the garage today and tinkering around with this mini bike project. If you like the tinkering, make sure if you haven't subscribed to the channel, make sure you do so you get notifications when we get to the next video with the new carburetor, and surely it'll run then. Surely. Okay, as always, like, comment, share, and subscribe. And I'll see you next time.